Mark slumped on his comfy, old couch. The apartment was small, but it was his. A half-eaten bowl of popcorn sat precariously on the coffee table next to a stack of comic books. He was trying to decide if he should watch a superhero movie or finally start that fantasy novel everyone at work kept talking about. Mark wasn't exactly the life of the party. He was more of a quiet observer, a little clumsy, and definitely not someone who had girls showing up at his door late at night. He worked as a graphic designer, spending most of his days creating cool logos and website designs. His evenings were usually spent like this, relaxing alone, enjoying his own company. He liked things simple and predictable. Little did he know, his evening was about to get a whole lot more interesting. The rumble of the television was interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. He jumped a little, startled by the sound. Who could be visiting at this hour? He wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, he walked to the door and peered through the peephole. His eyes widened. It was Sarah from accounting. He knew her, of course, but they weren't exactly friends. More like friendly acquaintances who exchanged polite smiles in the hallway. He smoothed down his hair, suddenly self-conscious about his old t-shirt and the fact that he hadn't shaved that day. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door. His jaw nearly dropped. There she stood, illuminated by the dim hallway light, wearing only a large t-shirt that barely reached her mid-thigh. He blinked, thinking he must be dreaming. Sarah? Here? Like this? He felt his face flush a deep red. Hi, Mark, Sarah said, her voice a little breathless, but with a playful glint in her eyes. She shifted slightly, as if suddenly aware of her own state of undress, but didn't seem overly concerned. Long story short, she continued, a small smile playing on her lips, I was at Lisa's house for a game night, and things got a little late. I was supposed to stay over, but they had a plumbing emergency. So, I decided to head home, but... well, I forgot to pack pajamas. She looked at him with a sheepish, yet confident expression. And you're the closest person I know in this building. So, she shrugged, any chance I could crash here tonight? I promise I'm not a sleep-talking ninja or anything. There was a hint of amusement in her voice, as if she knew exactly the effect she was having on him. Mark's mind was a whirlwind. Surprise was the dominant feeling, a tidal wave crashing over his usual calm. He was definitely attracted to Sarah, he'd always thought she was pretty, but seeing her like this, it was different. A blush crept up his neck again. But confusion was also a major player. Why him? Why now? Was this some kind of test? A prank? He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but the words just wouldn't come. His brain felt like a scrambled egg. He wanted to be a good host, a gentleman, but he also didn't want to do anything that would make her uncomfortable, or worse, give her the wrong idea. It was a delicate balance, and Mark felt hopelessly unprepared to navigate it. Before Mark could stammer out a coherent sentence, Sarah simply smiled and walked past him into the apartment. Don't worry, I won't bite, she said, her voice light and teasing. She headed straight for the couch, plopping down on the cushions with a sigh of contentment. Comfy, she announced, fluffing a throw pillow. Mark stood frozen in the doorway, still trying to process what was happening. He watched as Sarah made herself at home, a part of him admiring her confidence while another part panicked at the complete lack of control he had over the situation. He felt like a character in a movie, watching the plot unfold around him, unable to influence the outcome. The popcorn on the coffee table suddenly seemed incredibly embarrassing. So, Mark stammered, finally finding his voice. He cleared his throat, trying to sound more composed. Can I get you something to drink? Water? Soda? I think I have some juice. He gestured vaguely towards the kitchen, feeling like he was forgetting basic hosting etiquette. He needed to regain some semblance of control, even if it was just offering a simple beverage. He shuffled towards the kitchen, hoping the dim lighting would hide his still flushed face. As he rummaged through the refrigerator, he mentally berated himself. Why hadn't he cleaned up a bit? Why did he only have orange juice and Diet Cola? He grabbed a bottle of water, hoping it would suffice, and tried to remember where he kept the clean glasses. This was a disaster. A wonderful, terrifying disaster. He returned with the water and a clean glass, trying to act casual. Sarah was flipping through one of his comic books. "So," he said, handing her the water, "how's Lisa?" "She's dealing with the flood," Sarah replied with a chuckle. Apparently, her toilet decided to have a party of its own. They both laughed, and the awkwardness began to dissipate. They started talking about work, about the annoying boss, about the latest office gossip. They discovered they had a mutual friend in the marketing department, and that they'd both gone to the same college, though at different times. As they talked, Mark started to relax, realizing that Sarah was just a normal person, albeit one wearing a very large t-shirt in his apartment. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and shared observations. Flashback, 3 weeks ago. The office was buzzing with Friday afternoon energy. Mark was packing up his things, eager to start the weekend. "Hey, Mark!" Sarah's voice called out. He turned to see her walking towards him, a small, playful smile on her face. "I saw you working late the other night," she said. "Just wanted to say I really liked that logo you designed for the new client. It was really creative." Mark blushed, genuinely pleased by the compliment. "Thanks, Sarah," he mumbled, feeling a little flustered. "I appreciate that." "No problem," she said, her eyes lingering on his for a moment longer than necessary. "Maybe we could grab coffee sometime and talk shop? Or, not talk shop." She winked, then turned and walked away, leaving Mark staring after her, a confused but hopeful expression on his face. He'd brushed it off at the time, chalking it up to friendly office banter, but now he wasn't so sure. Back in the present, the conversation continued to flow. They discovered a shared love for cheesy science fiction movies and a mutual dislike for reality television. Mark found himself opening up more than he usually did, sharing his passion for graphic design and his dreams of one day creating his own comic book. Sarah listened intently, asking insightful questions and offering genuine encouragement. The initial awkwardness had completely vanished, replaced by a comfortable and surprisingly natural connection. The room felt warmer, the atmosphere lighter. Mark almost forgot about the oversized t-shirt, focusing instead on Sarah's bright eyes and engaging smile. He was actually enjoying himself. This crazy, unexpected night was turning out to be nice. As the night wore on, Mark started to feel the weight of responsibility. He was a host, after all, and Sarah needed a place to sleep. "I should probably, make up the couch for you," he said, a slight nervousness creeping back into his voice. He stood up, trying to appear confident, but his movements were a little clumsy. He grabbed a blanket from the closet, a slightly faded blue one his grandmother had knitted for him. He found a pillow and started fluffing it, trying to create a reasonably comfortable sleeping arrangement. He wanted to be a gentleman, to make sure Sarah felt safe and taken care of, but he also didn't want to overstep any boundaries. It was a tricky line to walk, and Mark was definitely feeling the pressure. He secretly hoped she wouldn't notice the small stain on the blanket. Sarah watched him fumble with the blanket, a knowing smile playing on her lips. She could see right through his attempts at nonchalance. She said, her voice soft and teasing, "you're being awfully formal for someone who's about to let a pajamaless woman sleep on his couch." Mark stopped mid-fluff, his face flushing again. I want you to be comfortable," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. Sarah chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. "Relax, Mark," she said. "I appreciate the effort, I really do. But you don't have to walk on eggshells around me. I'm not going to break." She paused, her eyes meeting his. "Unless you're planning on tickling me in my sleep." She winked, breaking the tension with her playful humor. Mark laughed nervously. "Definitely no tickling," he promised, trying to regain his composure. He finished making up the couch, albeit a bit more relaxed now. Sarah's teasing had helped to ease the tension, reminding him that she wasn't some fragile porcelain doll, but a down-to-earth person. With the couch officially ready, they settled back into conversation, the atmosphere now even more relaxed. The topic shifted from light-hearted banter to more personal territory. Sarah shared stories about her childhood, growing up in a small town and dreaming of escaping to the city. She spoke about the challenges she faced in her career, the setbacks and the triumphs. Mark, in turn, talked about his struggles with self-doubt and his fear of failure. He confessed his insecurities about his artistic abilities, his worries about not being good enough. They both revealed vulnerabilities they rarely showed to others, creating a sense of intimacy and trust that neither of them had anticipated. The late hour and the unusual circumstances seemed to strip away their usual defenses, allowing them to connect on a deeper, more meaningful level. "I'm not really good at relationships," Mark admitted, almost whispering the words. He looked down at his hands, feeling a familiar wave of anxiety wash over him. "I always feel like I'm doing something wrong, or that I'm not interesting enough. It's easier to just avoid them altogether." He knew it sounded pathetic, but it was the truth. He'd had a few short-lived relationships in the past, but they'd all ended with him feeling inadequate and confused. He hesitated, wondering if he was sharing too much, but Sarah's gaze was so understanding and non-judgmental that he couldn't help but continue. "I guess I'm afraid of getting hurt," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "Afraid of not being good enough for someone." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. Sarah reached out and gently touched his arm, her touch sending a shiver down his spine. "Mark," she said softly, her eyes filled with genuine empathy, "everyone feels that way sometimes. It's okay to be scared, but you can't let fear control you." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You're a kind, talented, and funny person. Anyone would be lucky to be with you." She smiled, a warm, encouraging smile that reached her eyes. "Don't let those insecurities hold you back from experiencing something amazing. You deserve to be happy, Mark." Her words were like a balm to his wounded soul, offering comfort and a sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. He looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Mark found himself drawn to Sarah, her eyes sparkling in the dim light. He leaned closer, his heart pounding in his chest. Sarah met his gaze, her lips slightly parted. It felt like time stood still. He could almost taste the sweetness of her breath. He leaned in further, closing the distance between them. Suddenly, a loud, jarring ringtone shattered the moment. Mark jumped back, startled, his face burning with embarrassment. Sarah blinked, equally surprised. The ringing persisted, insistent and unwelcome. Mark fumbled for his phone, knocking over the glass of water in the process. "Ugh," he groaned, scrambling to clean up the spill. The moment was gone, broken by the intrusion of the outside world. After a frantic few minutes of soaking up the spilled water with paper towels, Mark finally answered his phone. It was just a wrong number. He hung up, feeling incredibly foolish. He looked at Sarah, expecting to see judgment or awkwardness, but instead, she was smiling. "Well, that was dramatic," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Mark chuckled, relieved that she wasn't making a big deal out of it. "Tell me about it," he said. "I think I owe my phone an apology." They both laughed, the shared laughter dissolving the remaining tension. The almost kiss was still there, a silent acknowledgement between them, but the pressure was gone. It felt lighter, easier. Sometimes, Mark thought, life just throws you a curveball, and all you can do is laugh it off. And maybe clean up some spilled water. The late hour and the lingering exhaustion from the game night finally caught up with Sarah. She yawned widely, her eyes drooping. "I think I'm going to crash," she mumbled, snuggling into the blanket on the couch. "Thanks for letting me stay, Mark. You're a lifesaver." "No problem," Mark replied softly, watching as she settled in. He turned off the lights, leaving only a small lamp on in the corner. Sarah closed her eyes and within minutes, her breathing became slow and even. Mark stood there for a moment, just watching her sleep. He felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness wash over him. She looked so peaceful, so vulnerable. He wanted to make sure she was safe, that nothing would disturb her rest. He quietly adjusted the blanket around her shoulders, a small, tender gesture of care. As Mark stood there, watching Sarah sleep, a memory flickered in his mind. It was a small detail, something he'd overheard in the office a few weeks ago. Lisa from HR had been chatting with Sarah about her upcoming birthday. "So, big plans for the 27th? Lisa had asked, and Sarah had replied, "Just a quiet dinner with my family, I think." The 27th, that was today. It was Sarah's birthday. He couldn't believe he'd almost forgotten. He felt a pang of guilt. Here she was, stranded in his apartment on her birthday, wearing only an oversized t-shirt. He knew he couldn't let the night end without doing something to acknowledge it. It didn't have to be anything extravagant, just a small gesture to show her that he cared. A wave of determination washed over him. He knew what he had to do. Carefully, Mark tiptoed to the door, grabbing his wallet and keys. He slipped on his shoes, trying to be as quiet as possible. He didn't want to wake Sarah. He hesitated for a moment, glancing back at her sleeping figure, a small smile tugging at his lips. He was actually going to do this. He quietly opened the door and slipped out into the hallway, closing it gently behind him. He knew there was a 24-hour convenience store a few blocks away. It wouldn't have anything fancy, but he was sure he could find something, a small box of chocolates, a pretty flower, maybe even a silly birthday card. It wasn't about the gift itself, but the thought behind it. He just wanted to make her birthday a little bit brighter, even in this strange, unexpected way. Back in the apartment, Mark carefully closed the door behind him, his heart filled with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had managed to find a small box of assorted chocolates and a single, slightly wilted, but still pretty, daisy. It wasn't much, but it was something. He tiptoed over to the couch, where Sarah was still sleeping soundly. He knelt down beside her, his gaze lingering on her peaceful face. He gently placed the box of chocolates and the daisy on the coffee table, within her reach but not too close. He hoped she would see them when she woke up and that it would bring a smile to her face. He wanted her to know that even though tonight had been unexpected and a little crazy, he was genuinely glad she was here. The soft morning light filtering through the curtains gently stirred Sarah from her sleep. She stretched, yawning, and opened her eyes. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure of where she was. Then, she remembered, Mark's apartment, the game night, the forgotten pajamas. As her eyes focused, she noticed something on the coffee table. A small box of chocolates and a single daisy. She sat up, a surprised expression on her face. Who? Then, it dawned on her. Mark. He had remembered. A warm feeling spread through her chest. She picked up the daisy, its petals soft against her fingers. It was such a small, simple gesture, but it meant the world to her. Mark emerged from the bedroom, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Morning," he said, a little self-consciously. He wasn't sure if she had seen the gifts yet, or what her reaction would be. Sarah looked up, her face breaking into a radiant smile. "Happy birthday to me," she said, her voice filled with genuine warmth. She stood up and walked over to him, her eyes sparkling. "Thank you, Mark," she said, her voice soft. "That was so thoughtful of you." And then, without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him in a warm, heartfelt hug. It wasn't a romantic hug, but a hug of genuine gratitude and connection. He hugged her back, feeling a surge of happiness wash over him. He had made her happy, and that made him happy too. After a moment of comfortable silence, Sarah stepped back, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Okay," she said, a hint of seriousness in her voice. "We need to talk." Mark's stomach dropped. "Talk?" he repeated nervously. "Yeah," Sarah said, nodding. "About last night. About the pajama situation. About the almost kiss." About everything. She paused, taking a deep breath. This is all a little awkward, right? I mean, I showed up at your door in an oversized t-shirt, and now we're exchanging birthday gifts. It's kind of insane. She looked at him, her eyes searching his. I think we owe it to each other to be honest about what's going on here. Don't you think? Mark took a deep breath, steeling himself. He knew he couldn't hide his feelings any longer. Okay, he said, his voice trembling slightly. You're right. This is insane. But I can't pretend that I don't feel something for you, Sarah. He looked at her, his eyes pleading for understanding. I've liked you for a while, he confessed, his cheeks flushing. Ever since you complimented my logo design. I never thought someone like you would be interested in someone like me. He paused, his heart pounding in his chest. But last night. Talking to you, getting to know you. It changed everything. So, yeah, he finished, his voice barely a whisper. I have feelings for you, Sarah. I really do. Sarah's eyes softened, a small smile playing on her lips. Oh, Mark, she said, her voice gentle. You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear you say that. She paused, taking a deep breath. Okay, here's the thing, she continued, her cheeks flushing slightly. The pajamas, the plumbing emergency. Lisa's house, it was all a little bit orchestrated. Mark's jaw dropped. Orchestrated, he repeated, dumbfounded. Sarah nodded, a sheepish grin on her face. I really did forget my pajamas, she admitted. But the plumbing emergency? I may have exaggerated a little. And I knew you lived in this building. I wanted to spend some time with you, to get to know you better. I like you too, Mark. A lot. A wave of relief washed over Mark, followed by an overwhelming surge of happiness. He couldn't stop the goofy grin that spread across his face. So, you're saying, you actually like me? He asked, wanting to confirm what he was hearing. Sarah laughed, a light, melodic sound that made his heart flutter. Yes, Mark, she said, her eyes twinkling. I like you. A lot. Without another word, Mark reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. He leaned in, his eyes locking with hers. This time, there were no interruptions, no spilled water, no awkwardness. Just pure, unadulterated connection. Their lips met in a soft, tender kiss, a kiss that sealed their feelings and marked the beginning of something new, something special. It was a real kiss, a kiss that promised a future filled with laughter, honesty, and maybe even a few more forgotten pajamas. The next morning, the atmosphere in Mark's apartment was completely different. Gone was the awkwardness, the uncertainty, the unspoken tension. In its place was a comfortable, easy happiness. Sarah, still wearing Mark's oversized t-shirt, helped him make breakfast. They scrambled eggs and toasted bread, laughing and joking as they moved around the small kitchen. They ate their breakfast sitting on the couch, side by side, their legs touching. They talked about everything and nothing, their voices soft and content. It felt so natural, so right. Mark couldn't remember ever feeling this happy, this at ease with someone. It was like they had known each other forever, even though it had only been one crazy night. But it was a night that had changed everything. After breakfast, Sarah announced that she should probably head home to get her pajamas. Mark felt a pang of disappointment. He didn't want her to leave. I guess I should go, she said, a hint of reluctance in her voice. I probably have a very worried Lisa wondering where I am. She smiled, but Mark could see a flicker of sadness in her eyes. He walked her to the door, a comfortable silence settling between them. So, he said, scratching the back of his neck. Pajamas, huh? Sarah laughed, her eyes twinkling. Yeah, she said. Pajamas. Although, she added, leaning closer, I think we both know that things have changed a little since last night. She winked, and Mark's heart skipped a beat. It was true. Pajamas or no pajamas, things were definitely different. She opened the door, then turned back to him, a playful glint in her eyes. "I'll be back," she promised. "With pajamas." "So," Mark said, as Sarah reached for the doorknob, "about that coffee." Sarah turned back, her smile widening. "Are you finally asking me on a date, Mark?" she teased. He blushed, but stood his ground. "Well, yeah," he said, mustering his courage. "I am. A real date. No plumbing emergencies, no forgotten pajamas. Just dinner. Maybe that new Italian place downtown?" Sarah's eyes sparkled. "I'd love that," she said, her voice soft. "Pick me up at 7? "It's a date," Mark said, his heart soaring. He watched as she walked out the door, a spring in her step. He couldn't wait to see her again, to spend another evening with her, to explore this new, exciting chapter in their lives. He finally had a real date to look forward to, and it was all thanks to a knock on the door and a very large t-shirt. Back in his apartment, alone again, Mark smiled to himself. The place seemed brighter, warmer, somehow different than it had just yesterday. He looked around at the familiar surroundings, the old couch, the stack of comic books, the half-eaten bowl of popcorn, but everything felt new, infused with a sense of possibility. He thought about the crazy events of the past night, how a simple knock on the door had completely upended his quiet, predictable life. It was like something out of a movie, a rom-com with a slightly awkward protagonist and a confident, beautiful co-star. But it was real. It had actually happened. A simple knock on the door, a plea for help, and a forgotten pair of pajamas. It was all it took to change his life forever. And he couldn't wait to see what came next.